I've been given a mic that, oh, it does work. Hi, I'm Kabir, Akhtar. I direct and I'm moderating. I'm in charge of introducing everybody one by one, so hopefully they come out here. I haven't memorized their bios, but I actually know most of them because they're all really cool and talented directors. So first up, we have Payman Benz, who's a director of many things, including Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We also have Ryan Case, who's a director of many things, including Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We are very lucky to also have Nisha Ganatra, who's a director of many things, including Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And last but not least, we also have Jay Karras, who's a director of many things, including Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Thanks for being here, everybody, and all of our esteemed panel. We'll just jump right in. I wrote up a bunch of questions, and I hope they don't suck. But all you guys, have directed so much great comedy stuff. I don't have a list, but you've all heard at least one thing they've done. And it's an audience, I think, mostly of actors, right? Are there any people who aren't actors here? Cool. So nobody. Great.
Get out.
I think a thing that we could talk about that people maybe hopefully find interesting is what are some things, and just jump in, what are some things that actors do that make your job easier?
Know their lines.
Oh.
Come in prepared. Know their lines, have ideas and different takes on everything. That makes it really easy, actually.
It sounds so basic, but read the script and know your lines. That really helps. And I don't know, I did a John Wells show where they had a no sides policy, and it was the best thing ever because everyone came knowing the script, knowing their lines. And then your first rehearsal is actually a real rehearsal, not everybody kind of flipping through this tiny piece of paper, figuring stuff out. So it was, I don't know, it's such a pleasure when you get to actually have a real rehearsal because the actor's prepared.
Yeah, and read the whole script, because sometimes your line is like a callback to something, and it's always weird when you ask an actor to do something and they're like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it's just 25 pages. It's no big deal.
It's true, and I think open communication. So if I give a note and someone's like, yeah, and then I walk away and they're like, oh God, I didn't know what she was talking about. That's bad. So if I'm trying to communicate with you, then communicate with me, and then we can get to a place where the performance is great.
Also, the level of preparation can really help us in a way where it can enhance our ability to do cool stuff. I was on a show called Sirens a couple years ago, and the three guys who are the main actors on the show ran lines all the time, and they came in 7 a.m. one day. We ran a 4.5-page scene, and they ran it all off book. I was like, all right, I guess you guys are ready to go. And they said, you want to run the rest of the day? It was a 12-page day. I was like, are you ready to run the rest of the day? Like, yeah, sure. They ran all 12 pages off book, and what that allowed me to do is think about a 4-page scene I had a couple days later where I was able to do a really long walk and talk with very minimal coverage based on their ability to perform the scene in a theatrical manner without pauses, without mistakes, and just knowing their stuff in and out. It was amazing.
Shout out to Kevin Daniels. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Does this happen a lot? You were saying that people are actors showing up and not having read the whole script. Has this happened to you guys?
Not a lot, but enough times to where I had to say something being here in front of a bunch of actors.
I mean, what, yeah, right. I mean, what do you say?
I usually say, did you read the whole script? And they'll be like, yeah. And then that means no, because their voice went
I
really
heard that
high.
lying, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. But then I'll just have to explain the whole joke. I'll just explain the joke. And it's fine. It's just like, I feel like if I was there, I would be excited. You're on a TV show. You should these are good writers. It's a good script. You should read it all. It's good.
You guys all read the script ahead of time? Some yes and some laugh. I mean, yeah, that seems like super important, obviously, to know the story that you're trying to tell, And having scenes where there's nobody where people are prepared. Do you find, is it ever a thing that actors come to you where they've memorized their lines and they are sort of like now they're in it and they're too prepared? Is that a thing that you guys run into?
Oh yeah, especially kid actors. Like I guess I mean adults can do it too, but it's just funny to see it in kids because it's like this little innocent version of and kids will like their parents will work with them at home and they're like I'm gonna stomp my foot when I say this line, and it's really hard to get them out of that mode. And then I think that that's possible at any age though, to like get too stuck on something. Like you remember it only if you do this, or you are dead set on doing the line this way. That's bad, so.
Like my Brooklyn Nine-Nine bit, which I almost blew.
I think it worked. It
Yeah, see,
worked.
that's what I'm
it's
talking
good.
about.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, man.
The kid thing is interesting, though. You're right. They do get locked in, and I've had instances where they just cannot adapt beyond what they've rehearsed and cut, and then I'll just give them the line read, and they'll repeat it back to me, and then we roll, and then they're back locked in again. They can't get out of it. So, yeah, it's frightening.
I feel like you were shaking your head like you have not had this experience.
Yeah, I have now that I think about it with kids, but not with grown-ups.
Yeah, less.
Yeah.
You come in like a day player comes in, they've got 2 lines and they're focused on like the way they've done it, and now they just got to keep doing it, despite trying to shake them out of it.
There's always a way to get somebody out of it. Even kids, I mean, you just have to find the way, figure out what's going on with them. It's like any directing. You're figuring out what's going on with the actor and what you can do to change it if you need to change, for the next take.
I actually noticed what you're saying sometimes with a really long line. Sometimes the writer will write this juicy paragraph that reads well, but when you have to act it, it's super weird and it sounds strange. And what I notice happens is actors will get hung up on one, like they'll flub one spot and like reset. Oh, here's the thing I'd love to tell
Yes.
everybody.
Yeah, I want to jump in on
If
that
you
too.
reset,
Stop
if you have a
resetting
long
yourself.
line,
Yeah.
it's not your fault. It's the writer's fault. But when you're resetting, what I notice happens is the actor will start resetting and start to get frustrated. And when they get frustrated, they start to race through that first part of the line to get to where they messed up, and then they slow down. That is totally unusable in the edit. And then we have to like do it again. So like slow down, go the same pace, don't get mad at yourself. Everybody screws up on set. I'm probably gonna screw up more than you did. So just slow down, it's totally fine.
I also would just say don't reset yourself, because that is so frustrating when something really amazing is happening and you're watching it and then the actor flubbed a line that you don't even really care about that word or that, and they stop themselves and go, oh, let me go back, or let me take that again. And that's the worst, because then everybody falls out of the scene. The other actors are, and then this weird thing happens where it's like, well, let me feed you the line so you can go back. All right, let me feed you the one before the feed you. And then before you know it, you're like spending 30 minutes with everybody just resetting to one. I should just say cut and let's start over. And
have
it's
another
just like this
take,
weirdo, thing that happens all the time. But I just would say, do not reset yourself. Just keep going. And maybe nobody will even notice that you blew that one little part. And if they really care, then we'll absolutely make you go again,
Yeah, I think it's that fear of not, this is it.
Right.
Yeah.
We can do a lot in the edit bay. We can do a lot of things. So just, we'll let you know.
And that's certainly a good example of things that maybe, as established directors, that you would ask your actors not to do and hope that actors would know not to do. Are there other things that you can think of that you like, that you don't want actors to do, or that are, counterproductive,
I think what's counterproductive is sometimes, and this happens in TV more, is when the actor just goes to the writer to get the note or something, and they cut you right out of the process, because then the writer and the actor are having some conversation, or the showrunner, and you're just sitting there like, well, I eventually have to capture this thing you secretly are talking about. And that's really awkward and difficult, because as brilliant as whatever you guys are talking about with this writer is, none of it's going to end up on film if we aren't in that conversation. So even if you feel like this director is not helping me and I need to have the writer, or this director is going to be gone in a week and I need the showrunner here, then just, I think the smartest thing I've seen, and I do it too, if I'm like, this is a moment where we really need the showrunner, is just bring everyone into the conversation and say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Do you mind if we bring in, so-and-so? Yeah. But otherwise it sort of sets this difficult pattern of just making your job harder and a guessing game.
Anybody else? Things you've seen actors do that there are habits that actors have, that things you feel like are not super great?
I don't want to
few
make
weeks ago,
actors
I had a-
insecure. You know, I just think. I mean, like I think these are all great notes, like those, like know your lines and like
general stuff,
I'm
not
so
like
hesitant
specific
to go.
things,
Don't do
like-
this. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, part of
would-
it is a
oh,
culture behind the scenes. Like there, a couple weeks ago, I had a day player come in who he was doing a really great job, but in between takes, he was hanging out at Video Village and he was really loud and he was trying to be everybody's best friend. And it's kind of like, dude, you got to just, like someone had to pull him aside and be like, you got to take it down a couple notches and just sort of try to just fold into the culture here. It wasn't that kind of a thing. And that's actually, like he was trying really hard to ingratiate himself and show that he was doing this great job. And if you do a great job in the scene, that's the part that's going to be remembered down the road when the show is edited, when the show airs, when the showrunners are thinking about their favorite episodes, or the directors go back to, oh, that dude did that one line, and he made that one line sing. It was so funny. But going behind the scenes and being boisterous and loud on set it should go without saying, but shockingly, it doesn't.
Yeah, Video Village seems super fun, but also people are sometimes trying to think
Yeah.
there, you know, and there's a lot going on around you. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
I would also, maybe it's because it's like a TV and everyone gets really
Yeah, you, like,
excited.
gather around.
The other thing I'd say is just you don't have to have your phone on set. That's something I would say to actors. It's like maddening when you're like rolling and they're just on their phone. You're like, and I say
Yeah.
and like 8 times. They finally put it in their
Yes.
pocket and give like a horrible read, and then we have to do it again.
You just keep saying and.
I say and so many times because I don't want to yell. I'm not a yeller on set, but I'm like, and did he hear me say and I just keep saying it until
a loop?
Yeah, it's just a loop. You can cut a blooper reel together. With just
Just
me
like you're in a
yelling.
gag reel at
Yeah.
some point.
I'm in there.
Yeah,
I'm in
yeah,
there.
doing that.
Yeah, but yeah, just you don't need your phone all the time. You're working. That's all. Thanks. She likes
Yeah,
it.
see? Yeah. She's not on her phone. Now people are putting their phones down. You've scared everybody.
I like it. Unplug.
Someone's periscoping this. I know it.
I think it's just the whole thing is being live streamed right now.
Oh yes, that's right.
One big periscope.
Don't know what that means. You know, on-set culture is a good thing to talk about. I'm just gonna wait. On-set culture is an interesting thing to talk about because, I mean, how many of you do some episodic work? And how many of you want to be doing more episodic work? Right. So it occurs to me that there's as a helpful sort of touchstone for a lot of people, because you guys have a lot of experience on set, probably more than a lot of people here do, and that's a very good point. You know, I think that sort of set etiquette is a thing that a lot of us have learned just from experience. You know, just from being there and being there more and making mistakes and doing dumb shit and talking too much. Not that I ever do that, but like stuff like that. And that's a good point to make. But like, what other types of things have you seen that, like, for actors, in your experience, is helpful, you know, as far as like being part of a working set, as far as being part of a working crew, and as far as being like part of a successful day?
I mean, one of the things that's hard is that on-set culture is often the tone is set by the star of the show, right? So if they're, for example, on Shameless, which was the John Wells show where nobody had sides, William Macy in Emmy Rossum, came in every day, knew their lines. When you weren't shooting, they would sit in a chair right off set. So we never wasted a minute waiting for somebody to come back from their trailer or calling them from the trailer. Like, they would just sit right there, read their scene, read their book, whatever they were doing, talk and stay in the scene, so that even if I'm just moving the camera from this direction to that direction, I don't have to go back to square one and get everybody back in the mood. They would just sit in the feeling of that scene. And it was so helpful that 5 minutes of trailer time over the course of the day gave me 2 more hours of shooting, because it was just 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It's added up to 50 minutes like that, and 20 setups. You know, we had 2 more hours of capturing performance and getting to do more takes and doing more interesting things, rather than standing around waiting for everyone to come back from their trailers and get back in the scene. And that was just, you know, one different culture of set that was so incredible.
Yeah, clock
People
management.
scatter like cockroaches sometimes, you know. You still call cut and everyone, you know, and that's not helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, we're managing the clock. A lot of what our job, unfortunately, boils down to is clock management, time management. So having that in mind, I think, is a really great point. Like, yeah, and shaving 15 seconds off 800 times a day adds up to a lot. Extra takes, extra time for alts, extra jokes, more funny, more options in the edit.
More options for yourself to be on camera.
Yes.
One thing that's great too, if you're a comedy actor and you're good at improv, is when, once you you get the scene, or if you have a great idea or you want to improv something, to make sure you hit the lines of the scene and then also get in your improv, and then it's always fun just for the culture of the set too. It keeps everybody alive and happy and creative that this improv's happening, but it's always better at the end of the scene, because then we might use some of it or we might not, but it doesn't like sort of force your hand later. But sometimes you'll say, hey, let's do a fun run, and everybody will just sort of go crazily off book, and you're like, I can't use any of this, but it's amazing. But it's fun if you can work sort of your great idea into at least the sort of point of the scene that we're trying to shoot, and try to tell the same story point somewhere in your amazing improv. That's always like a really great thing.
Yeah, and if you're gonna audibly, like let's say you have a great idea for just a small thing, like to do an audible reaction to something, or maybe there's like a moment in the scene where you were thinking you can add to it. If you want to pitch that to the director, you also need to like make that a conversation with your co-stars, like the people that are in the scene with you. Because I find like people want to interject something and you'll be like, great idea. And then the people in the scene don't know what's happening, and it's sometimes so crazy on set that it's like great to kind of make sure everyone's comfortable with that. Not that it's your job to do that, but just make sure that you say it when the director's with you and the other people, and like, even just making a sound could mess up the other actor if they don't know you're gonna do it. Unless you're doing a fun run and everyone's like prepared for it. But if it's just something you're thinking, oh, this would be great, it's good.
I think if you're coming in as a day player too, and you have a pitch for something, the way that I always appreciate that is if they come over and just talk to me softly and not sort of pitch it out in front of the entire set. It's a really nice way to come in with an idea or an alt, and then I'm always honest and just say whether I like it or whether I can use it, or like let's get a couple more as scripted, but I like that, let's do one at the end. But to pitch that, just do it, quickly, simply, off to the side. It's a nice, respectful way to approach that.
Especially as a day player, so that
Yeah.
you're not really part of the full-time family,
Yeah.
right? Then you're like protected, right? Because I feel like a big part of the gig is protecting the actors,
Yeah.
against all types of things. But improv is an interesting thing to talk about because, some shows for sure will be like improv like crazy, and some shows are like, just stay on book as much as you can. But like, what do you find like? I don't really even know how to ask this question because I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. But what do you find like works as far as like improving for when you've got actors who want to do it and are like letting loose a bit? Like if sometimes you've got to rein them in. We could just talk about it, what it's like working with actors who are improvising,
I think it's helpful if you're, strong improviser to, first of all, to communicate with the director that that's something you have ideas, you want to do stuff, and then the director can guide you to keep them on story. Because, like she was saying, if it's just nonsense, it's never going to make it anyway. But then, if you want to do something like very improv heavy, to understand coverage a little bit and like have a communication with the director about that. Because if you're doing it in the wrong coverage and they it's like, okay, are you shooting my stuff first? Will you be able to get that on the other side? Because it's just, a lot of times it's a waste of time unless it's planned correctly. And if the director knows, like, oh, I'd love to improv something around this, they can plan to get that. But, we're under time constraints. And so, it's like, do I improv in just my coverage? But then do you have the other side of that? Because if you don't, you probably won't.
Yeah, if your coverage is last
Ever use it.
and you have the idea already, bring the idea up early.
Yeah, or is it a funny little like in piece, and then it's better to do it in the wide, But if you talk about it and you kind of have a basic knowledge of things and can communicate with the director, it's really nice.
And try to stay near your mark, at least.
Don't go.
Just as long as you're in the general area, we're good for post. But sometimes someone will be riffing and they just like go over there, and you're like, no one's ever gonna see this. Why'd you
You're
do
just
that?
off camera. We can't actually follow you there. Right.
It was weird. It was a funny joke, but no one saw it.
But I mean, do you have situations, and I feel like you must, where an actor is trying something that you just think is not a great idea? And I think it's probably different. The subtle nod is good. It's probably different when you have like, people who are regulars on a show, of course, because they're going to try stuff and they're frequently there, and we're all guests as directors. But for like guest stars or day players, I mean, how do you talk someone down?
You got to be nice about it because they're a guest. They're already nervous. I feel for anyone who comes in for like 2 lines on a show, like that's got to be terrifying. And if you like put yourself out there and like in your head on the drive over, you're like, I'm gonna do this bit and it's gonna be great, and then you like pitch it and it falls flat. Like I can't let them see that disappointment on my face. So I'll just usually, I don't know, how do we get around it?
Well,
like normally you like.
I always try to find if there's
Tone?
something if there's something like redeeming in it. There's something that you like. Oh, I see what they were trying to do there. She was trying to yell at him because there's something about that that's funny, but she's yelling, and she seems crazy. So let's try it, or whatever. Or he's trying to do this, but whatever. And if I can find something that they're doing that can be, tried once more, and we have the time, maybe I'll be like, that's great, but what if we did this, if it's not completely off the wall, but if, and then let them know we have that. Now let's try this, because it really is. You're doing several takes, and be respectful of, and I honestly respect people for trying things. At least they're, giving you options.
You do that pause also that we have that. So let's try it this other way.
No, I don't do the pregnant pause in front of the actor.
It seemed
just
effective.
These actors, No, but because it is hard to put yourself out there. Having one line is terrifying. Because it's like, if I blow this line, I look so, it's. I've seen people be so terrified doing one line more than anyone else, but I get it.
I'm anxious for them. Like
Yeah.
I'm nervous.
Because you only have that one moment, and it's like, they're gonna cut me out. I know they're gonna cut it. It's terrifying. I feel for that.
You're making us all nervous.
What I'm saying is, you shouldn't be nervous. But I get it if you are. Yeah.
Anybody else? Thoughts on improv down there?
Yeah, it really is about, especially in half hour, there's, depending on network, 21 minutes and 30 seconds of program time, and depending on the show and depending on the page count of the script, there's a story that has to be told, and inevitably things already have to get cut from what's on the page. So if something is sort of going off the rails and there's one little nugget that we can use that's, a few extra words or another character in an ensemble, for instance, throws in a little reaction, a few words reacting to something that could be a funny cutaway that can be both funny and could actually, and sometimes help pull up time. I just think about it, I try to think about it editorially too, and if it's something that's really funny and really quick, and making sure that the showrunners have options to not use it is a really important thing. But if you have an idea for something improvisational, think of a really short version of it, the most concise short version you possibly can. Because it's, just like the time management on set, there's a clock management in the edit too, and sometimes it's really difficult to get it to time.
And jumping off of that, also a great reaction shot, reacting to everything that's happening is, first of all, for every actor important, but especially if you're a day player or a guest star, if you do a funny reaction, there's a large chance that's going to be, and we need those.
Yeah, and a dead stare, by the way, is sometimes
Deadpan.
a great reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, we do like to talk about staying alive for sure when you're not speaking. It seems sort of hopefully obvious, right? But also on the subject of doing performances, comedic performances, what do you guys prefer? Do you guys prefer to see a lot of variation take to take on lines, or do you guys prefer to see, a much more sort of not that?
I like a variety. I like having options. Definitely levels too, and it's a tough question to answer because it really depends on how it's going to affect the other performances. So if it gets into sort of permutations and combinations of all the other coverage that you need to get, and it's going to affect a million other things, then not as much so. But in general, and especially I think Kabir and Ryan both were editing, and you guys like options in the edit, right?
Yeah, definitely. I just feel like if you know like in television, if you know the writer has a specific way they want it, you want to make sure you get at least a few of those, and then you want options. If they're doing something funny, let them try that because it'll help you in the edit. But you have to also know what producers are going to want to have too. This is expected. Now let's give them some fun ideas.
Yeah, and going unexpected too. Like if there's a line that's supposed to be yelled and screamed, try a take where you come way down at the end instead. It might be interesting.
Payman.
I agree. No, I mean it's difficult because I think every show is so different. Sometimes the showrunner wants, basically will give us a line read to give the actor in a tone meeting, which is not fun for the actor or us because that's not, let us find it our own way. But then there's other shows where it's just a little more open. I think tonally it depends. Like I did an episode of Angie Tribeca, which is a very, it's like Naked Gun. It's a very silly show. And I noticed as the auditions were getting emailed to me, you were seeing like a full range of playing it straight to playing it jokey. And it's because how nobody knows exactly what they're supposed to do on a show like that. The leads are usually huge, and usually you're brought in to be just like a straight character, like do one thing, don't be funny, let them be funny. Like that's a lot of times what you come in for. But then every now and then they'll give like, we did a thing where a guy has to like come in very sick and is like projectile vomiting. Naturally, like half of the auditions, everybody played it really big because it was a guy vomiting buckets on these people like across the table. And then we ended up being like, oh, maybe we should go a little more straight. And then we were looking at people that were like too straight, and then it was like this weird balance. So in other words, there's no answer. It's a crapshoot. I'm sorry. I realized in the middle of that I was not helping anybody, and I apologize.
You're not answering.
I also think that that's part of the read the script. Another thing is watch the show so that you know when you're going in, like, are you there to support the leads? Are you there to be the wacky one or the straight one? And most of the network shows will follow sort of a pattern like that. But and then the show I directed, Transparent, and on that there was so much improv and so much just going with whatever was true in the moment of the actor. And that show just was, the culture of the show was the performance is the most important thing. So it didn't matter if you walked into a dark part of the set, we were all gonna follow you and make it work. So nobody had marks, nobody had, it was just, we'd do a rehearsal, and wherever the actors went and whatever they did, then I would design my shots to capture it. And it wasn't about like, stand here, say this, make this more, but that was specifically that show. And then if you do that on another show, it's gonna be on the cutting room floor. So I think just watch the show and you get a sense of what's everyone doing, what's the general tone, and where can I bring my talents in a way that adds to this ensemble piece. Because it is truly a very collaborative thing. Like that's what I love about television, is it's such a collaboration and everybody is important. Like it's not like a movie where sometimes there's a throwaway moment with a character if you don't make it into something better. It's, if you're in the show and you have one line, that writer needed this character to say that line for a very specific reason. So there isn't just a sort of wasted throwaway moment, in especially when you only have 21 minutes. You need everybody to sort of bring their A game right away.
And if you're told to just play it straight, I know it seems like a bummer, but I don't know how you all feel. I feel like the straight character is sometimes funnier, especially like you said, if you give a good reaction. So, and I think there's more work for people that can play that role than people trying to be the funny person. I think you'll work forever if you're a good straight character.
Yeah.
But if you're funny, forget it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're funny, you're funny for like 15 years, and then if you don't evolve, like the next group comes in. Yeah, it's very sad.
But nothing makes everyone happier than when somebody's playing it big and then you ask for it small and they can do it. Then everybody, it's like, practically stands up and cheers that this actor had the range and the confidence to let go of their preconceived idea and do what a totally different idea. And it's a joyful moment for everyone when you can see the range of talent.
So sometimes, right, we'll get into a situation where there's a scene and you have an actor who's not getting the joke, or who's not landing the joke, or who's sort of not, it's just not happening. What are some things in those situations, apart from sort of, pounding your head against the wall, which is not productive, what are some things that you do to help the actors in those situations? And what are some things that actors can do, you feel like, to help, to help themselves. Like, I mean, obviously it's a difficult situation. And you're like, oh, you're not getting this joke, or this joke isn't working for performance reasons. Like, how, let's talk a bit about that.
Well, like you said, so I think if you watch the show that you're on, you'll kind of get a sense of the tone. When I'm in that situation, I just flat out explain the joke, and I'll even explain like, it's gonna cut like this, and there's gonna be music, there's gonna be a cue, and like I notice the actor gets excited and they start to see it, and it's like, it's fine if you don't get it. Sometimes the writer has some weird joke that you don't interpret. It's totally fine if it doesn't work. Like, I'll just
figure it out
just,
together.
Yeah,
You're
you
like,
just
oh,
sometimes
that's
it
on
gets
a new
better.
level of that joke by talking to you about it.
Totally. So it's okay.
I was the whole time you were saying that, I kept thinking about Sofia Vergara, because she does this, her English, sometimes there'll be like a reference to something and she literally won't understand the joke, and then you explain it to her and then she does it like perfectly and you're like, oh right, she just done that like 3 takes ago.
We have that
Something
sometimes.
very American,
Right.
Oh,
We have that
right.
sometimes with like younger actors when they'll be like, as a reference written, the joke is that they get this thing from 1981, but they were born in 1999.
All the
And you're
time.
like, oh, no,
Yeah.
Pac-Man. Okay.
All the time, all the time. Yeah.
I did a show with Wendy Malick, who's just amazing at comedy, and she said something about Jimmy Stewart to the young actor, and he was like, "Who is that?" And everybody just like, oh, it's just like the saddest. But I think once I had to direct more of a dramatic actor who had taken this role as a comedic role and didn't quite get the punchline landing, and I refuse to give line readings. I just don't do it, and it upsets me, so I just don't do it. But I was like, oh my God, we're not gonna get it. And she sort of was saying, I don't know how to land, I don't know what you're even saying when you say land a joke. And so we kind of landed on, I just beat out the rhythm for her. Like, I just was like, it goes ba-dun-da-dun, dun. And then she did the line.
I've done that. Like,
with
kinda
it,
sing
you
it,
could just
or
kind of
sing a
sing
rhythm
the,
to them, yeah.
or beat out the rhythm, and then the actor kind of feels it suddenly, or,
Yeah.
and then they can say the line with the joke, with the landing the joke, but not, it's like a partial, I don't know, a rhythm reading, not a line reading. Yeah.
It's like, I don't want you to say, I'm going to school. I don't want you to say, da-da-da-da, and fill in your own 4 words
Yeah, do whatever
that
you
are
want.
in the script.
That's great. Yeah, exactly.
I had the same thing with a Juilliard-trained actor, who's an amazing dramatic actor, and then it was a similar situation where there was just a joke that just wasn't landing, and also avoiding line readings. We just ended up having a conversation about it, and we didn't get into the musicality of it, but it just always goes back to open communication and like explaining the joke and just talking about it and having a conversation, just being honest. Like, hey, it's not working right now. I think we can make it better. Let's figure out how to do that together, and just opening a dialogue.
And like anything else with acting, if you just figure out what's going on with them and kind of have a conversation, like you said, you can figure out a way to make it work, whether it's a dramatic moment or a joke. It's just, jokes are tricky because it's just like, you're finding it with them. But if you work together, then you can.
I just thought of just a quick funny anecdote. The same actor, at one point I said, hey, when he says this, can you give me like a little bit of a quizzical reaction? And he said, well, you wouldn't cut to me then, now would you? And I said, I might if you give me a funny reaction. And he goes, okay, I will give that to you. And he did it, and it went in the cut. So.
That's great. It's like a robot.
Yeah, you mentioned auditions earlier, and obviously auditioning is a super fun activity for everybody. It seems awful, and I'm so sorry that you all have to do it. I was looking at audition reels today for this episode that we're doing, and it just seems super, super difficult, And I know, in a very, very broad sort of sense, what it is that I'm looking for. I could not probably tell you, like in any case, what it is that I'm looking for. So, what are you guys looking for?
Well, it depends on the role.
Comfort and ease on camera, actually, is the main thing. They have to just look comfortable and relaxed.
Yeah.
If there's any sense of nervousness outside of the performance for the character, then that's a red flag for me, because I start calculating and thinking that's going to cost me an extra minute, an extra 2 minutes, an extra 3 minutes, and I won't get my day, or I'll miss out on takes from other coverage. So as awful as the process is, the moment you're on, just be as comfortable and relaxed as you possibly can, at least for those 20 seconds or however long it is, and then you can lose your mind right after it's cut.
I sometimes I like to watch like the moments in between when they do multiple takes, because then that way I know, that read wasn't what we're looking for, but I can work with this person, I can shape it, it's fine, they're gonna be okay. Because sometimes like the casting director, whoever's reading with you, is giving you nothing. And I'm listening to them being like, that was the most that was like Siri doing, like, reading a sentence, like, and then you guys have to, like, you're gonna get a job that'll be on TV based on this other person. So sometimes I'm just looking for, like, sometimes it's just like a glimmer in the eye. You're like, oh, I can work with. Sometimes with kids, that's the way it works. You're like, oh, that was his mom's read in the car that he repeated, but I can work with that kid, and I'm usually wrong. That's fine.
And you're like, oh no. That's a good point, though, about the casting person reading. If I ever have the power to do it, whenever there's a situation where I'm casting something super important, a big part, I bring in an actress or actor to read with my actors. Like for my feature, when I was like testing and doing reads with people, I was just like, I did a few with the casting director, and she's amazing, but she's just reading. And then I started bringing in my friend who's an actress, and it was just like night and day. And I was like, oh, wow, they can connect with this person. Because this is like, I'm casting, big part is I don't want them to have to, like, think about getting out of that mode. And then, they can react to the other person better. And
That's the other thing that's hard is now we don't get to even go in the room for casting. Like now I'm just sent links.
Yeah,
Often
TV,
like
it's
the
hard.
day before you have to shoot. And it's like, it's weird, because it used to be, it was why I got into directing, was to work with actors. And so the best part was casting, because you got to sit and meet so many, and even if they weren't right for that, you could make a note and think, oh, this person could be this other thing. And now you just get links of just who the casting person decided to send you in the final links, and because sometimes you suggest people and then you don't get that link. And then you think, well, did my friends suck, or did they just not go through the right? It's
Like
just,
it is filtered.
yeah, and then you realize, oh, I'm not even seeing everybody. I'm just getting this, final 5 of whoever thought these were the best choices. And so it's just I don't know.
prefer the shows where
You need to be in the room with the actors so you
It's
can
worth the time to
understand.
go. Yeah.
Sometimes we're getting those emails while we're literally filming on set, and then they're like, the showrunner's like tapping you on the shoulder. Did you look at those auditions? You're like, I'm watching takes. What are you talking? And then like during a lighting setup, I have to like plug my headphones in and then like decide who's going to be on television. It's like the craziest thing. So
Your phone still has it.
am I bumming everyone out? I'm saying
a
aloud like
bummer.
really sad stuff.
It is a bummer, but
It's all great. We're here. We're doing it.
I think this is really good. Like, it seems like it's a lot of stuff that maybe people do or don't know,
Right.
And it's like everybody else is talking positive stuff, and
But I think on those tapes when we were sitting in the dark in the bathroom in between setups watching your auditions, we or on some terrible stuttering like streaming video. But I think I'm just looking for range and believability. So like if I get 2 links and they're both exactly the same, I'll often just go right to the next actor, because I want to know when we change things on set, I could see that this person could do it once this way and once that way, and that's kind of all you can ask for, is just for an actor to have range and bring you ideas and show more than one part of themselves.
yeah, the directability is obviously a huge thing. I think with one of the roles we were casting today, we got like, it's weird, right? Because you miss the human interaction of like the person walking in and getting to know the person and talking to them, or getting to try it a way that like you as the director are thinking, here's a way we want to do it. And instead of being a human that you interact with, you have a 30-second quick time. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch it a few times. Maybe I missed something, But like one of the guys that we cast today out of the pile of sort of the 9 that we were sent was the one who did the one thing differently. Like 8 people did it this way, which is sort of like, I could understand you would do it that way. And the 9th person did it a different way. We're like, oh, that is the move, you know? And I think there's something to say, and maybe we could talk about this a bit, that when we cast actors, right, when you work with actors, you're working with them because they're bringing something of their own, not because they're doing it just like the way you tell them to, or the way that the script, you know, but someone who's got their own point of view, yeah? Yeah. That was designed to spark conversation.
Well, just went, yeah.
I agree.
I agree very much. Very much.
Wholeheartedly.
Payman's super positive.
Can you talk more about that, Kabir?
This is my first time moderating anything. You didn't even say anything. Are there?
I'm trying to think of something. I can't think of anything to say.
That's fine.
That
The question was
great.
terrible.
Okay,
I
so-
get it. I get it. It's cool. Do you guys have like any like, and this is kind of a difficult question to answer, I guess, but like, just like really stories of just really difficult, and don't have to name names, you can, just difficult actors that you've worked with, you know, and things, and again, like for an audience of, you know, professional actors, things that the actors were doing that were just making it really hard for you, you know, to succeed at making them look good.
I'm a woman that's never happened. I'm just kidding. Just totally kidding. No. I would never even tell the stories. I'm afraid you guys would figure out who it was, and it's like horrible, and I would never do that. But I think that when people say difficult actor, I cringe, because you hear that all the time, and especially in like episodic work, and you know, oh, you work with so and so, look out, and then you go on the show, and usually I find that people, they're wrong, because it's just about communication, as I've been saying all night. Like, that's my thing. But I just think, you know, difficult is, it's like, what do you mean? I mean, maybe the person just wasn't approaching them the right way. I try to, like, if I hear someone's difficult, I try to take a moment and observe them and like kind of see their deal, because that's part of our job. And then, you know, there's always a way to approach anybody. I don't know. I mean, there's also, I'm sure, horrible people working around, you know, that happens a lot too. But more often than not, I feel like the difficult actor is just stressed out for some reason, and maybe that whatever person, whether it was a director or a writer you heard it from, they weren't being communicated with properly, or their needs weren't being met in some way, and that's frustrating for them. So it's like, I just try to come at it from a sympathetic angle, because if you go in going, oh, actors are difficult, then like, how are you going to work with them? It's insane.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've only worked with 1 or 2 truly difficult
Right.
people. One was very recently, actually. 2 days before shooting, we were informed that he wanted cue cards on white oak.
Very cool.
And, yeah,
Like on
Painted?
wood? Like
White
painted
oak.
on wood?
What? Yeah, white oak. It didn't end up happening, but there were cue cards not on white oak. The white oak was the one thing that was denied. But also, he wanted to be shirtless in a scene, and they accommodated that. But then once they accommodated the idea of him being shirtless in the scene, they had to then agree to his spray tan guy and his spray tan booth being brought to base camp for $2,500 for the day. So that was difficult.
Did you just direct Donald Trump in something? What just, is that what?
No comment.
That's a good closer, but we got to keep going. Right? Yeah, exactly. You just walk off the stage now.
No, it was
It
actually
gets better. I'll see you guys later. All right.
That was one of the craziest people I've ever met in my life. Yeah, it was nuts. But yeah, I agree in general. Yeah, every time I hear people are difficult, I'm like, whatever, they're not difficult. They're just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what but one thing that that is difficult is when it's like somebody who is I don't know, just purposely, and this is what I was told, like, so the same thing happens, like, watch out for this person, and then like, wow, they were great with you, and you're like, maybe they're great with everyone, and it just isn't a thing. But there is like the using up the time, like you have so little time to get so much done in TV, that if you have an actor who just kind of just waylays all of your efforts to get things going by waiting right until, like, there's so much time while they're lighting that we can be talking, you get to talk to I always use that time to talk to the actors. Let's rehearse, let's do something, because you're trying to squeeze it in. If they wait until everything's lit and set and ready to go, and they stand on their mark and they go, I got a question, then you're like, fuck, like, oh my God, like your brain is just like, shit, we are going into grace, and then we're gonna have meal penalties and all, you're just like, just to think about, that it's a bigger world than your one question, and that question could have been asked, or should be asked before everybody's all ready to go, because it just pulls like the wind out of everyone's sails. And then but some people, I think if they're deemed difficult, it's more just that they're making it hard for production to get accomplished, and it doesn't even have to be a difficult actor. It's just anybody who gets in the way of this thing meaningfully, without good reason. Like if you're in the middle of a scene and it's like, this isn't working, that's 100% the best reason to slow it down and say, hey, we're not going to make this day. We're going to take these scenes and put them on a different day because we need to rework this. But, if you just have a question that, should I be wearing this shirt or not? And you wait until the third take to decide like, oh, you know what? I should be holding like a glass in this scene, or I should be eating an orange. And then you're like, oh, great, I can't use any of the things we just did so far,
Yeah, totally.
So that kind of stuff sometimes happens, but it's more.
Seems more, it's just being a team player, like where every single person there is on the same team, and there's no one is against anybody. I feel like I had the same thing. I feel like every time I'm warned about someone, I go up and talk to them, and I'm like, that person was great.
I know.
I don't know what that is.
Sometimes they're my favorites.
Yeah, I know. Does that
Always.
mean we're weird?
But yeah.
It means you're difficult. All of
It means
you.
I'm difficult? Damn it!
I feel like we've been talking a lot about things that, like, obviously as directors, like I said, the job is certainly to protect the actors and look out for them, and to help. And we're talking a lot about things that I feel like actors, broad strokes, know are things that are done, and we've been talking about a lot of details. But I also feel like there are things that, as a director, you have to do sometimes to help an actor without necessarily letting them know that it's happening. And we could talk about what some of those things are, because you were nodding so much.
I will never tell what those things are. But that's like our whole job, right? Like my whole day is helping actors without them knowing I help them, or trying to hide the fact that I'm helping them in some way. I mean, that's your whole point, is just always like trying to help the actor get the best performance possible. Because, I just always feel like I don't care how cool my shot was if I don't believe what that person's saying or care. So that's like the most important thing, and that's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah, sometimes it's talking to the actor that's off camera. If they're not, if someone needs a little more from someone off camera, it can be that. It's all day, every day. It's anthropology and psychology and problem solving and just sort of figuring it out. So yeah, a lot of these questions are hard to articulate because it's something that you just have to assess in the moment and react to immediately. But I think and also the other thing is like about the question, like, oh, if you have an idea that, oh, I should be holding an orange and it is take 4, don't be afraid to ask, but know that you can maybe even admit, I know we've already done a few takes, but what if I was doing this? Because then we can decide, oh my God, that's so great. You know what? I don't even care that we did 2 takes. Like, yeah, hold the orange and let's go from there. That's going to be great. So don't be afraid to ask a question, but be mindful of everything.
When we get down to editing, and coming from an editing background, especially, we could talk about this for hours, I'm sure. But there's a lot of things that I know that a lot of us have seen that are really like helpful, small things that actors do that I feel like increase your chances of being on camera, which is I guess ultimately the goal, right? Grow a great performance and, be on camera. I like to say that I'm like, one thing you could do to increase your chances dramatically is to not fix your hair mid-take, because it looks great.
Yes.
We have people for that.
Yeah.
And it looks super unmotivated, and it won't match other things.
And they're watching at all times, those people. They have their own monitors. The people that have done your
Yes.
hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a team ready. You look great.
Yeah.
You look great.
Everybody's fine.
We'll tell you if you don't. We promise.
Right, but when you guys get into post also, then, like, surely there are things that you're like, oh, thank goodness, someone did this. An actor did this thing that is really helpful to us now.
I think it's varying reactions when you're not talking and just every take thinking about a slightly different way to react to what's being said, because that reaction shots can be bailouts for us. They can be added laughs. They can serve a lot of different purposes. And if there's something a little bit different, it might not even be something that we detect as it's happening on the day because we're focused on so many other things. But then when we get in the edit and we see that, that's gold to me when I find those little gems.
That's the best thing. If you're just saying your lines and you're not reacting, you're not fully acting.
Just like improv, you got to be listening to the other person. And sometimes it's hard on you guys because I'm just as if it's just this audience, but we'll say let's do a reaction run, and it feels very weird. But if you go through that, you'd be surprised how often we use it. And sometimes the reaction note comes from the network. I've been on a show where they were like, "Oh, by the way," in the tone meeting, the network said they want more reaction shots. So like that week, I got way too many of them. But it's huge. You'll end up in the cut a lot because a lot, like you said, bailouts is huge. It's we're always looking for. I mean, sometimes we've all done this where we're like, we'll pull a reaction that wasn't even during a take. It was like they're reacting to something offset before we call action. We're like, that's a pretty great face. Let's just use that one.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
that happens a lot.
I mean, if you are in a scene opposite someone who has a monologue, then react. Because we're gonna cut away from that monologue.
I have done the thing where I haven't quite gotten a facial reaction that I wanted, and then at the end of a take, it's the last take. At the end of the take, I won't call cut, and I'll say something to the actor while standing in the correct place to get them to react to me and make them be like, huh? I'm like, great, perfect. We're going to use that face. That is exactly what I needed.
It's like you say something mean, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, really? They're like, what? I'm like, cut. That's great. Thanks. Right. On like a Friday afternoon when it's the last day and we're not going to come back. We're getting asked back. And that's
Also, I think too that the not to be afraid to move. Like I think everybody's been so trained that like your lighting's here, your mark's here, and then you'll just stand on that mark and do your whole scene from that mark. And on the flip side of don't be afraid to move is Payman's thing of if you do move too much, then don't be offended if we're like, hey, this is great, but can you make your movement from here to here instead of sort of across? But so many times I'll be like, there are no marks, we're lighting everything, go where you want, and people will just stand in one spot and talk, and you're like, just go for it, like try something
Yeah, like
that
if the joke's
uses
not
the
working,
space or the
move around or walk away after you say something.
Yeah.
A lot of times very
If you
funny.
look at Louis Dreyfus is brilliant at that. She says like things are always funnier if you can leave the scene after you drop that line. And you watch Veep, and that's all she's doing all day. Is just dropping an amazing line and disappearing behind a piece of furniture or something.
And also, like on the thing of editing is like understanding coverage. I said that before, I think, but it's like, if you're doing something in this shot and then we're going in here, make sure that you do that in both of those things at some point, whether it's a behavior or just like a mood or whatever, like understanding what we're doing. And then for movement, it's like important. Can I move around? And if you want to move around, we can prepare for that. Just let us know. Like in a rehearsal, speak up, and so you don't get stuck. Right. Like if it feels wrong in the rehearsal and you're like, this just feels so wrong, I can't do this, tell us so we can move around. It's better moving, usually.
And if we're going to do an improv
Then you have to
take,
remember where you moved and do it the same way every
Yes,
time.
exactly.
Because otherwise it's a disaster for everyone.
Oh, definitely.
if you're going to improvise and you think you're going to move around, like have a conversation with the camera operators and just let them know, hey, I'm thinking about going here and here. And then that way you might do something amazing and it's not in focus, and that's a bummer. So
you like it if your actors go to the camera guys and not talk
I
to
do
you.
not.
No,
I
that's
think
if
we
I'm
should
like,
get-
we're going to do a fun run and they just want to know the range, and they'll be like, hey, I might just kind of go around here. At that point, I'm like, we're doing a fun run. Like, if it works, it works. I'd rather just let them be free and go.
Right.
And then,
Not so much like, hey, Todd, just follow me. I'm going to go this way now.
yeah.
Right. Todd was my hypothetical camera person. Yeah.
He's great.
Love Todd.
Yeah. You guys should really meet him. He's really wonderful. I mean, you guys have all worked on a lot of really big shows, a lot of really sort of big name talent. Have there been like, people, if you think of any like these, stars of shows that have made your job like super great that you've just loved working with? There's like, is there one? I mean, obviously it's hard to think of maybe just one, but there's one in particular who you just really loved working with. Maybe you could talk about why, like what they've done to make you feel welcome on a show,
Ty Burrell is my favorite. actor in the world. I edited him for years, and then I directed him a lot too. And Ty is so great because literally you can hear Ty in between takes. He'll just say under his breath, like when he isn't thinking about you hearing, "I love my job." You know, he's so grateful to be there. He'll do anything. One time we had to shoot. I was in the trunk of a car, and Ty was driving us around in rush hour. And he's like, "I'll drive." And we had to stay late so we could get this shot of him slamming on the brakes in rush hour. And we were just searching for traffic. Like, what actor, what big actor in season whatever of a show is like, yeah. And he'll literally do anything. He does stunts, and he's just like the nicest person, like obscenely nice. But I think it's that gratefulness. Like he's never acted like he's better than something, and that's one of the reasons he's hilarious, is because he's just like, I'll do anything to make the joke work.
What part of town were you guys looking for traffic in?
Brentwood.
You were looking for traffic in Brentwood.
Well, we were looking for like a speed up and a slam on a brake, and that's hard because you can't really go anywhere.
Right.
In Brentwood on San Vicente at like
Sure.
5. But and I felt totally safe having him, by the way, drive us around. Like, it's like this level of trust with
I've
him.
been in so many trunks of cars or lying down in the backseat of a car while the actors are, and you just suddenly, like, you have a moment where you're like, what is happening? We could all just.
You're like, my job is really
weird.
Yeah, super weird.
Anybody else? A star of a show or a you've been working with that's been good to you?
It's hard. The first person that comes to mind is John Michael Higgins. I worked with him last year, and he's just a master. He makes everything 1,000 times funnier. I would give him like the tiniest sliver of a note that I didn't even think was going to lead to a joke, and then he does the most amazing thing that we then do 5 more times right afterwards. Like, he's been around forever, and he always kills it, and it's almost like he's still trying to prove himself. I feel like he's always trying to be the funniest character, the funniest person he can be. And he's very easy to direct. I just laugh, basically. That's my whole job with him.
He and Ty have worked with both of them. You can give them, like, I always think they're very similar, that you can give them a screen direction, like, he drinks a glass of milk, and they'll find a way that it's like the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
You're like, how did you do that? They both have that quality.
Do they work together?
No, I tried to get him on Modern Family like 50 times, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
We both directed him in Great News, and it was just like because every moment you thought, okay, we'll just race through this scene, and then you're like, oh, I want to spend all day shooting this scene, because he just would add so much. It was just really
He just like really, I feel like one of the common threads with anything comedic is just there's a level of absurdity at whatever you're doing. Somebody's doing or saying or thinking something absurd at all times, and he understands what's absurd about his character on that show, like where he just does something that nobody else could do on that show. He just, it's probably just all that, a lot of training.
There's something, I can't even name them because I've just had such the fortune of working with such incredible comedic talent. But one thing I've noticed across the board with all of them is how hard they work. They're not coming in just like off the cuff, even though it looks like it. And one amazing moment was when Payman was directing the show, and then I got called to pick up a scene for him, and the scene was starring Rachel Dratch and Anna Gasteyer, and I was like, yes, and so, but they were doing a scene where she was sort of drunk. It was a morning talk show called Wine Talk, or Wine, it was a play on a very popular talk show, and they were just wasted, and they were just drinking and chatting and improvising and going at it, and as soon as I said cut, I came up and Anna just said, okay, is it too much? Do you think that's too big? Am my words slurring too much? Can you understand the words I'm saying? Like, she just technically was so on it, even though you just thought she was just having this fun, made up time. And I was so impressed that I was just like, holy shit. And the thing that happens is when an actor is working on that many levels, and John would do the same thing, right? He would have, okay, I'm going to do this, but tell me if this is too broad. I don't think it is, and here's why, and here's what I'm going to do. And then you realize they're working so hard that you start working harder, and then everybody around you gets harder and more focused, and then it just becomes this reach for excellence that is something that happens in comedy that is such a rush for me, and that everybody around is just so tuned into it, and then when you nail those moments, you just feel like you just accomplished the greatest thing.
Those moments are when the whole crew is laughing, and that's the most fun.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go home because they're just cracking up. Yeah.
My favorite thing is when you see the boom operator just stifling laughter. That is the best. His name is Todd also.
He got promoted since then.
Stone face, dude. Todd does not smile ever.
Do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, I
'Cause
mean,
if you say as soon as you say a name that they know, everyone in here makes the same sound. They all go, oh.
Yeah. Well, I've also been fortunate enough to work with a lot of really amazing people. But I mean, one thing that comes to mind is Parks and Rec. I went in on season 6, and Amy Poehler is amazing. She's tireless, and so funny and so smart. And I felt like the environment there felt like it was season 1 of a new show. Like, and it was season 6. They had already done 100 and something episodes, and it was this contagious environment where everybody was in pursuit of excellence and making it the best it could be, and it was one of the best sets I've ever been on, and it came from the top down from Amy and Mike Schur.
But I mean, Amy Poehler, when you realize how hard she works, I mean, she is up before anyone else. Mindy Kaling, you get notes at 4 a.m. Like, these women are awake early before anyone. They're working on their character, they're writing, they're producing, they're actually giving notes, they're cutting, they are working so hard that it just is offensive if you walk in not knowing your line, because that is just not what we're all trying to do.
I was listening.
Someone handed Kabir cards.
Yeah, they handed me a pile of questions written by the audience. I am now meant to go through them and determine which ones are good. Oh, here's a good one. And it's simple, and it'll give me a minute to read the rest of them.
They're all great questions.
They are all great questions. What was your favorite? This is a question from April. Where are you, April? Yeah, killing it. They won't give you the mic, so I'll ask for you. What was your favorite show you directed, and why?
The Last
Good
Man
answer,
on Earth,
Ryan?
because it's
Sorry,
it's The Last Man on Earth because it's my favorite show, and I don't know if I'll ever get to say that I'm directing my favorite show. I just tonally, top to bottom, I love it, and it's ridiculous that I work on it.
Man Seeking Woman was my favorite show that I ever worked on. As a dream.
Wait, why? Part of the question was why.
Oh, why?
It's not me, it's the card.
I got
it was a
to
dream.
direct. I mean, it's like a director's dream because you get to do. I think in my episodes I had an action movie, a black and white McCarthy hearing, a horror movie, Where the Wild Things Are, Sherlock Holmes, a big Comic-Con scene with crazy, just like it's the craziest thing ever. And Simon Rich is super genius, and and the cast is great. It was just everything was perfect about it.
I mean, I truly cannot pick because I've just had the fortune of loving every single show I've directed and not saying yes to shows that I don't love. And so but I mean, I'd say Girls, because even though it was season 6, it was just the creative freedom you were given and the trust from the showrunners and the creator who is an incredible director herself. So to know that you're directing her and she would just give up and say, I'm just going to be an actor and you direct me, and was open to that. That was such a beautiful experience. And then Transparent was amazing because I was on the whole season. So it was very special that you get to build something from the first season and be there the entire time and not just sort of drop in. But I think the special shows don't make you feel like you're a guest director. They make you feel like you're an integral part of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was just, I just did a show called Future Man for Hulu, and that was also just like, the more creatively involved they allow you to be, the more satisfying it is for you as a director. So I've just been so happy and just wrapped with love and just great actors, great talent, great news. Like, all of these shows are just so fun and yeah, I can't pick one.
I'll say one of my favorites was Workaholics. I did, over the run of 7 seasons, I did 8 of them. And I was there, not every season, but almost every season. And I got to do a couple at the end to help close out the series. And it was sort of, it was just one reason why, a couple reasons why. The showrunners and creators also gave tremendous freedom. So if there was something that went sort of into a different genre, they were totally cool with you sort of changing the entire style of how the show is shot to match up with that genre, which was really fun to sort of, especially as a director, like really geek out on these specific elements of that genre and put all that in there. And then also it was comedically speaking, those guys had already been working together for years when they started the show. So they already had this amazing chemistry, and they were masters at improv and going off on a tangent and bringing it back around to the task at hand, telling the story. And also it was kind of, I feel like, based on my age when I first directed Workaholics and when I last directed Workaholics, it's probably, like, it might very well be the last kind of thing I get to direct that is so completely insane, and people, you know, like smoking bongs at parties and in episodic television. Like, I don't know that I'll get to do stuff like that. It was just really, really funny stuff.
Right, that's
It's
not your life
also-
anymore.
I mean,
No.
one of the things with Last Man on Earth too, and Dear White People, that was so special was the actors are all, I don't know, there's something special, especially Dear White People, because it was a cast of all people who were so talented and had never been given a shot, that there was a different feeling on the set of, let's not blow this, you know, and let's like really shine. And that was really special, that this whole cast just really understood like what was at stake. And I think I didn't expect that on Last Man on Earth, for all these very established, accomplished actors to come with the same attitude of you know, graciousness and desire, you know, but they all did. And Will Forte just tirelessly working from morning till night too. It's just really special when all of the actors understand the privilege of what we get to do every day.
And I think they recognize how weird it was that show's even on television. So there was like this excitement. I can't believe they're letting us still do this.
Yeah, it's when
Like,
something feels weird and special, and like, why are we so lucky? And then
yeah,
that's a good
like,
vibe.
like we shut down a freeway and
Yeah.
we blew up a, yeah, it's great. It's, they get really excited about it.
Yeah, we feel that. So I work on a show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and we feel that way constantly, where we're like, I can't believe we're still getting to do this. We're making an insane musical comedy that everyone loves and nobody watches. Sorry. This is a question from Carolina. Carolina, I'm sorry. Who gave you your break into directing TV? Like, how did you kind of get started? That's a great question.
I mean, my first break was Transparent with Jill Soloway, and it took me a very long time to break in. Like, did every sort of minority, women's fellowship, all that stuff, and it was really difficult. And then it was just years of trying and shadowing and this and that. And I had a friend who would just say, you just got to get lucky. It's just luck. And then, you know, finally was just like, maybe I'm just not meant to do this, or maybe I'm not good at it, or something, you know. And it was that thing of, you've never done it before, so we can't hire you to do it. And it was that horrible catch-22 until luckily this new channel, Amazon, came along, and this new, you know, showrunner sort of said, oh, you know what, I want a director that doesn't have any TV experience. I want someone from independent film. And I was like, I have just the resume for you. So it totally just was luck, you know, in the end. And luckily, and it was that friend who said, hey, you know what, you should hire Nisha Ganatra. So luckily, she helped me get in. And then for network TV, it was Mindy Kaling who helped me, and Michael Spiller helped get me my first network TV directing job.
Yeah, for me, I took a circuitous path. Long story, put it into one sentence. I accidentally became a showrunner at a young age of big award shows, and I started hiring myself to direct the single camera short films within those shows. So that's how I started directing, but then it was another 10 years until I started doing half-hour episodic, and that was the same thing. If you haven't done a half hour, we can't give you a half hour, even though I had people like Jack Black and Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell on my reel, but I didn't have a half hour, and it just took a long time. And Troy Miller, whom I met when I was an intern, then 17 years later gave me my first half-hour episodic. And then a few years after that, on Parks and Rec, a friend of mine was an EP and director, and another friend of mine had jumped on that season as a co-EP, and they both talked to the showrunner. They had one slot open, and that's how I got that. I got, lucky. I mean, at that point, I had a body of work, but to get the network show was even, well, you can't get a network half hour because you haven't done a network half hour, even though I'd done other half hours. But then once you get one, then you get more.
Troy Miller actually also got me going too. So he probably doesn't want us giving out his phone number.
He's helped a lot of people out.
He really has.
I knew I wanted to direct since I was a kid, but I started with editing, and I'm really glad I did for a million reasons. But then I would be on show after show that would last one season, like most shows, and that was frustrating. And then I finally got Modern Family, and I was like, oh, this seems like it'll be here for a little while, and it was. And so I just told anyone that would listen that I wanted to direct, and it took a lot of work. I had to get the showrunners to go to bat for me and some of the actors, and just bother everyone constantly. And then but then eventually I did start directing there. And then after that, Mindy Kaling, Michael Spiller. That was the first show I did after Modern. But you just have to like wait for someone to believe you and then annoy everyone, until that happens.
Same thing. I made sketches and shorts for years, and then a couple little things. I directed sketches on Kimmel for a little bit, but then a good friend of mine, and you know as well, Peter Atencio, who's the main director on Key and Peele, brought me into the last season to direct like a dozen sketches. Those showrunners made a show, or were showrunners on another show called Teachers that's on TV Land. So I went into the whole first season of that show, and then that's cable. And then getting into network, there's an executive at Lord Miller who used to be an executive at Comedy Central. The first general meeting I had 10 years ago was with this guy, Seth Cohen. Yeah. And Seth remembered me and then brought me in for a meeting, and he's like, have you been watching Last Man on Earth? And I gushed about it, and then he set up meetings, and then that kind of led into, so yeah, it was just friendly
you go
people.
On like 1,000 meetings.
Yeah, many.
That's the part that no
Didn't
one
think
said.
it would ever, any of them are ever
It
going to
was
pay
like
so
off.
many meetings.
17 meetings, right? Just to get Mindy, the Mindy project. It was like 17 different meetings.
You drive on a lot of lots.
Yeah, you go into like 6 different lots, and then the final one, they're like, well, it depends how you do on this. We're all going to be watching, and if you do great, then these doors will be open to you for other shows, and if not, then you're back to square one again. Yeah. So
Kind of the way
there's a
we've
lot
been
of
saying
pressure.
things that scare all of you. Mike Shore said something that just scared the shit out of me at the rap party for Brooklyn. He was like, man, I don't know how you guys do it. The guy, like, the ones who do episodic directing, it's like every 2 weeks you're just taking your entire career to Vegas and rolling the dice on it. And I wasn't scared until after that.
Now I'm scared. That's terrifying.
These guys aren't even directing full time, and they're all terrified now. That's a great question, Carolina. I'm sorry I said your name wrong before. This is a really interesting question, and it's going to be really hard to answer, I think. So I'm not going to try to, but you guys can. It's from Abra. Is that right? Hi. And her question is, this is a hard question. What's a way to organically meet directors that doesn't involve casting or getting cast? And short of, because I was thinking about this, I was like, how would I answer this question, But because I didn't come up with anything, I was like, you guys, short of like going to your house or following you home or going to shit like that, But you think about like when you've met actors that you've liked. Maybe that's a different angle on this same question. When you've met actors that you've liked who you didn't meet already on a set, where did you meet them?
Parties.
Parties,
mostly,
yeah.
And-
We party a lot, guys. If you can't tell.
I mean, we live in Los Angeles. You're going to meet actors at parties. So I remember, an acting studio teacher told his students to go to every single party they're invited to, and just go to all the parties because you have to in Los Angeles. And it's not like a networking or annoying thing like that. It's just the wider your circle of friends, the more likely you're going to land upon a director or an actor. And then, and then it just, we all naturally love actors. So when we meet you and then we're friends and then we think about, hey, how can I get my friend into the show? Or what can I do what would they be good for? Or how can I help her? I think the thing that's great to do is I love when actors invite me to performances they're doing. I don't like the here's my reel link, but I like the hey, I'm going to be in a I'm going to do a play, or I'm going to do a reading, or I'm in a stand-up, or I'm doing a couple of minutes at this this comedy show or anything like that. I'll go to any improv or theater or show or anything like that is always a good way. Just keep performing and inviting people.
And if you perform enough, people will be talking about, you'll hear people's names a lot, and then you'll see their name come up, and you're like, oh. So rather than just knowing them personally, just knowing of them and that they're out there working is important.
We know, like sometimes Ryan and I will ask each other about casting, and it's like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I worked with, yeah. So it's I think to go off what you said, it's if, networking is weird, you feel like you have to do it, but it's like if you're just cool, like I feel like the whole everything we're doing in this industry is like we hang out with we work with our friends, and then we're friends with who we work with. It's like if we get along and click, we're gonna find something to do together, so that just let it happen organically. That's a hard question. That's really hard.
So just be cool is what you're
Just
saying.
just be out there. And I think like being invited to performances, or if you have like something playing at a festival in town, like I love that stuff.
I have a
That's
friend
awesome.
that she started an open mic night in her living room, like in her apartment. She just like built a little 2-foot stage and then started an open mic night, and I thought it was hilarious and awesome.
Did anyone go to the first one, or was it just her?
Everyone? Yeah, it became a thing, and then it was like pretty amazing, And then if you are seeing somebody, I mean, I go up all the time after a play and try to get that actor's info or meet that actor or talk to them, So I think it's just perform as much as you can, even if it's in your own living room.
I do that.
People will notice you if you're in your living room. This is not a question on a card, but it's a thing that's occurred to me, which is on the subject of getting to know, connecting actors and directors, is the subject of cold emails and so forth, and how you might feel about that. If you feel like that's effective, helpful, harmful, annoying, good, bad.
Yes.
Yes.
No,
exactly.
it's hard.
Payman Benz.
No, it's hard. It's hard because like for the first, as soon as I started getting like paid for work and people saw my work, I would get sent stuff a lot. And what I did at first was like, great. And I would just like watch everything, and I would send really extensive notes. And I had other direct friends that are like, you don't want to do that. And then I would get more and more stuff. And then there's this guilt that overtakes me where I'm like, oh, I'm on set, I'm busy, I got this email, I have to flag it, and then like, our emails get crazy through the week, and I don't respond, and now that person hates me. It's terrifying. So
How
I
dare you,
don't
sir.
think the
I
cold.
don't think they hate you.
Well, that's
They
good.
hate
That's
you.
good. To
They
hear.
email me to say they hate you.
Email.
They email him to say they hate
That's
me.
a
No,
strong-
I don't think I don't know
strong-
how you all feel. I don't think the cold email works.
I don't
I-
think
No.
it's
Yeah.
awkward.
I mean, sometimes if it's a link to a really funny show or something, but I hate the here are my new headshots emails. Like that's always, and then, yeah.
Or can you
Just
give
out
my
of nowhere? If there's no
Or-
way
yeah.
in, it's too strange.
Or like long emails. Like I feel like I do get these
Yes.
cold emails, and sometimes like if it's maybe like a nice 2-sentence email that was not cut and pasted, then great. Like, hey, I saw your episode of this. Cool.
But it's not usually that.
No, it is difficult because I feel bad. Like you were saying, I do also feel bad when that happens. And I'm like,
Also, like-
I want to help.
Also, like Payman said, a director's inbox is a crazy place because if you're prepping a show or you're editing a show or, which we're usually doing, or you're shooting, it's just filled with stuff. And, if I didn't have like the way to label emails, I don't even know how I would navigate, and you're constantly emailing about things. It's a stressful place, and it's not exactly where you want to meet someone.
If there's a scene where somebody has a picnic basket, we have 20 emails about that picnic basket.
Yeah,
Like,
and
that's
it's
not
like,
a joke. Like just
Is
like
it gingham
thousands of
or is
pictures.
it polka
like,
dots or and you have to, and it's just like a lot.
Yeah.
And so, and like when they're in the middle of reading those emails, you don't want you don't want to pop up. It might be a bad time. Because
Right.
we might
You have
be
that
just
stressful
like, I don't know
thing.
about the picnic basket or whatever.
Your name shows up. I associate the stress with your name for the rest of your career. Right?
Yeah.
Remember that time you sent me that email when I was having a hard day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, thoughts on?
Yeah, I think the cold email does not work. I mean, I think in addition to parties, if there are any events at the Directors Guild that are open, or if you have a friend who's in the Directors Guild, you can tell them, hey, can I be your +1 to go to any of these things? That's another way. And then, this is the old adage of just who you know. So for instance, there's a young actor who got in touch with me recently because his sister is friends with my wife, and I ended up watching his reel, and it was super funny. He had one funny short and then 2 short things that were dramatic, but the funny one was first. So I actually watched it, and the funny one was first, and then the next 2 were not funny, and it was confusing because I kept waiting for something really dark and funny to happen, but nothing funny happened. So I actually wrote him and I said, hey, I think you need to pick or make 2 separate things, and he ended up making 2 more funny shorts. He sent that to me. I thought it was really good, so I actually forwarded it along to a couple different casting directors whom I thought would be interested, and he's meeting with one of them next week. So that's one.
So email him.
If you know my wife's friend,
Todd? Is it Todd?
Katie.
No.
Also, I think the email helps if you are doing something specific. Like if, often I'll get emails from Indian American actors or actresses saying, "Hey, I notice you do this stuff, and if you are looking for somebody, here's the thing." And then I just sort of throw it. I don't reply. I'll throw it in a file that's like, or okay, if because it's harder to find, and if you're looking for it, then I know I have this bin, and I'll forward it to the casting director and say, please check out anyone from here, So that kind of stuff I think is okay.
I'm the same way with like Persian actors because there's not a lot of us out here. So when I get one, I'm like, hey, and then I tell my parents like, look, there's other people. They're here too. That's great. Yeah.
So if you're white, you can email Ryan or Jay.
Oh,
It's
that was
Ryan
my fault
Case
completely. I took
at-
that and took it in the wrong direction. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
I'm just reflecting back what you're putting out, buddy. Like, we can't end there either. We seem to have time for more.
There's got to be one more, right?
I know. What am I gonna do? This is a similar question, but hopefully easier. It's from your handwriting is like mine. Senta? Yeah, there you go. Cool. My handwriting is like this too.
Kabir has forgotten
No,
how
seriously
to
about
read.
the handwriting thing. It starts like your answer to that one question. I'm gonna go slow, like a word at a time. Who would you suggest? Who would you suggest people watch, or what TV or films would you suggest for like actors to learn about like comedy timing, delivery, etc.? Are there things that you feel like are like useful, maybe like touchstones or references, or like that's sort of like that movie is in itself a masterclass, or this book is a
You know what I love? Christopher Guest movies, just because, well, they're just funny also. But just because they're such masterful improvisers, and they're so good at their characters. Like John Michael Higgins, speaking of John Michael Higgins, just like, these are like masterful improvisers, and the way that they inhabit these characters is just like captivating, and it's really fun to watch, and probably informative for an actor, I would think.
I think going to, I used to go to, before I was married with a child, I would go to movies on a Friday night, an opening night of a movie. Even if it was a movie I didn't want to see, like I'd go to some big, stupid blockbuster that I didn't want to see because I wanted to feel how people in the theater were reacting and see where the laughs were coming, and if something that was not my sensibility but was making everybody laugh, I wanted to figure that out. So I think watching everything, like watching big movies, watching small movies, and really sort of figuring out what works and why. Another exercise that I used to do a lot is, and still do once in a while, especially if I'm prepping for a show that already exists and there are other episodes to check out, watch with the sound off. It's interesting what you realize in terms of a million different things. Camera movement and blocking and reactions. It's a pretty interesting thing to try out.
you can jump in.
I would just say if as far as comedic performances go, I would lean towards like if you feel like your sensibility is like this person, watch someone that's different, because you're not necessarily going to get that. You don't know what role you're going to get. I think try to figure out why you don't even have to find it funny. You can. The more you watch everything, the more you realize, oh, I get why that's funny, and then your range will just expand instead of just being like, I want to be the next Jim Carrey. Like just broaden it out a little bit.
But
Watch
also
stuff
to
you
just
wouldn't like.
watch the big classic things that everybody talks about, because mostly the writing staff on these shows it's so insular too. Like they are comedy nerds that have watched this. They all will refer to the same episode of some show that, you can't be the person that's like, I've never watched an episode of Seinfeld, or I don't watch Friends, or you have to
Larry
like know
Sanders.
the big sort of, shows that were popular for a reason. And then you also have to know the more, like the cable shows that all the comedy people think are cool that nobody really watched or whatever. Like you gotta kind of keep
only
up
for
on all of
chit-chat
those.
purposes, just like
Just for reference and knowing like the iconic stuff. Like,
There was
just
we
for-
had a what's the word, person come in for a it's true, we had a person come in to meet about a position, I'm trying to be vague, whose resume was cool, and it's for a comedy show, and in the meeting the subject, we were talking about shows and trying to describe the style of the show, and somebody made a reference to It's Always Sunny. And the response was, "What's that?" You guys are good. See, that's reacting when you don't have a line. And you can, now you can imagine the person did not get hired because we're like, well, you need to have that sort of common language to be able to discuss, like.
You have to at least know the title.
Yes.
So you can pretend that you saw it.
Right. Yes.
It's a good tip too.
Yeah.
You
Aware
can't
that
watch
there's a
everything. There
television
are too many things.
and that there are shows
Way
on
too
it.
many good things. Yeah, there's a lot.
There are way too many.
But you should at least know that It's Always Sunny as a thing.
Try to watch
Like,
the
it's,
pilot.
how do you
or
not know
two
that that's a
of them.
show?
I
That's
don't know.
crazy. I'm grilling you like you're this person.
Yeah. The gang do a panel. I get it. Yeah. I think we're out of time. Is that right?
That's a good reaction.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
good.
Well, how about a big thanks for the whole panel?
Thank you.